that as a serious issue. With that infrastructure at the airport and with the alignment of policy across all of the ecosystem, we can see how that translates and transforms. And for the countries in Africa that have taken that on board, it is evident that aviation really can deliver on its promise. The second thing that we continue to do is ensure that there is sustained political focus on YD and SATAM. I know it's not broken, and yes, it's still relevant. So we continue to engage with all of our different stakeholders from the presidential level through our ministers, but also bringing together the ecosystem. From the connectivity point of view, where are we? So access is important, but we need access in a standardized way. And for too long, in the construct of this market, different states or countries in Africa had been using different models of air service agreements. And what we're saying is, number one, the YD is your guideline, is your foundation. So use the provisions and standardize your air service agreements. Should we even have them in the first place? Probably not, because the YD is a multilateral agreement. But in the event that we have not been able to work towards moving away from these assets, then at least use a standardized version that is aligned with the YD. In addition to that, guess what has happened? New routes have opened. For those who may have been paying attention, 113, in fact 14, I just saw this morning that there was a new route somebody was telling me about. I saw it on the news, but someone mentioned it yesterday. So 114 new routes have not just launched, but are being operated. Many of us who travel across Africa have seen the difference because the connectivity has improved, not just within regions, but across regions on the continent. 114 in 3 years. Yes, it's not that big bang we want, but the big bang will come eventually. What this is showing us is that things are trending upward, the market is growing, and the airlines are taking advantage of that, at least those who are ready. We are also consolidating SATAM implementation, moving from signatures to service. So we're looking at standardization, harmonization, and the regulatory framework from, for example, the economic regulation template, which we are working with AFRAA to see how we can find common ground in terms of some of the provisions. There is a dispute resolution mechanism that is in place and operational and already taking complaints. And there's practical guidance that we provide to states to help authorities say yes to new city pairs with confidence. The fourth, is that the fourth? Yeah. The third area is on sustainability. And we have identified 60 critical infrastructure gaps across 41 countries in Africa, which is about 90% of our intra-African market. These infrastructure gaps have been prioritized into 6 buckets, which include aircraft fleet and equipage, which include MROs, maintenance services, performance-based navigation, communication systems, air navigation systems, air transport, air navigation service systems, as well as sustainable aviation fuel and the allied businesses that come from that. So, what we're going to be doing is moving these gaps into project opportunities with our partners, including World Bank, who's here with us, which will be moved into this project development in targeted countries. The fourth, of course, is on the investing in people. The next generation of African professionals, women and men alike, must see a future in this industry. Training pipelines, mutual recognition of licenses, mentorship and leadership programs, and real jobs that keep talent on the continent. So as I close, what do we ask from you? See me as one of you. Why? Because I was one of you. I worked in an airline before, and I was in charge of all the agreements from every department. But the one that was interesting, very interesting, of course, in EXCO meetings, was those commercial agreements that we were able to sign with others. So what do we want from you as airlines? Take the opportunity. Lean in to SATAM. Seize it as your own. Design schedules that prove the thesis and not just defend the status quo. And how do you do that? Cooperate. Deepen the cooperation amongst the airlines. It's impossible to do this on your own. And with a 2 to 3% average, as IATA would tell us, the market is simply too small for us to parcel it off individually like this. So deepen the cooperation. It is important if we share this market and share it enough to build new corridor strategies, to evaluate reforms and speak to ministers with authority. This is important. Cooperation, but also information. We need data from you. Share data with us, with yourselves if possible, for development. Of course, anonymized, standardized, and protected. But it allows us to build and to make the advocacy and to build a case. We know the pressures that you carry. I know, especially the airlines in the room. Those fuel costs, aircraft availability, foreign exchange, infrastructure gaps, and sometimes the policies that do not match ambition. Still, when Africa has chosen to act together, we have surprised the world. Let us do so also in this case, and especially on SATAM. This sector can do it, and this sector can do it again. AFCAC stands with you. As the executing agency of SATAM, our job is to make the rules as transparent as possible, the road predictable, and the partnerships real. And yes, we know that the implementation is uneven at the moment, but we continue to work towards having a standardized and harmonized approach with your cooperation. And we will bring the African Union family, ICAO, ASECNA, AFRAA, ACI, IATA, and all of our different stakeholders and development partners to the same table to keep them there until we solve these problems, either step by step or in parallel. To our hosts, thank you once again for setting a high bar. To AFRAA, congratulations on another AGA, the one that I'm able to make. I'm so glad because last year I was not with you. And to each airline here, large or small, state-owned or private, your success is not just your own. It is the continent's mobility, its commerce, its confidence. Consider this a simple wish from AFCAC. May the conversations in this meeting turn into approvals, approvals into schedules, schedules into full cabins, and healthy balance sheets someday for most of you airlines. Sustainable skies, a connected Africa. Cooperate, collaborate, one step at a time, we'll make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adefunke Adeyemi, Secretary General of the African Civil Aviation Commission. As always very insightful. Next, we invite the Regional Vice President for Africa and Middle East of the International Air Transport Association, IATA, Mr. Kamil Alawadi, for the good news message. Round of applause, please. Join us at the stage.
Wow, you can tell somebody was short here. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and Aaron. It's an honor to be here this morning. Before I start, and I didn't plan this, I would like to regretfully inform everybody that our dear friend Angeline Simane passed away last night at about 6 p.m. She had a short battle with cancer, and she passed last night. For the people that know her, she was an amazing woman that was very, very passionate about aviation. She has a lot of achievements. She had a lot of achievements in her time in aviation in Africa, and I truly believe that the aviators in Africa, if not the world, has lost a very, very special woman. Moving on. So it's a privilege to be here in Luanda on the 58th AFRAA Annual General Assembly, graciously hosted by TAG Angola under the patronage of the government of Angola. I extend my appreciation to Abdurrahman Berthi, the SG of AFRAA, and like to highlight our long relationship between both associations. We have the same objectives and the same goals, and we have been working brilliantly over the years. And I personally thank you, Abdurrahman, for always being there when we need you, and you have been an amazing entity and support for the aviation industry in Africa. I generally, and as everybody knows me, I don't particularly like reading off the speeches. I like to rant on from my heart. But today I'm going to try to stick to the speech because there are some points that I actually want to mention. So it's a little bit more serious than normal. So globally, aviation in 2024-25 is performing well, despite ongoing certain uncertainties, geopolitical tensions, and economical headwinds. Over the first 10 months, passenger volumes globally increased by 5.3% and cargo by 3.3%, compared to the same period last year. These results, especially for cargo, highlight the sector's ability to adapt and endure. Africa's passengers demand grew, and this is a number that everybody here should be proud of, okay, by 8.8% from last year. That is literally the highest globally. Well above the 6.6% globally. So the growth in Africa is the highest globally. Cargo volumes grew by 16.6% year over year, leading all the regions again. So we have passenger growth and cargo growth in Africa leading the global growth in 2025. These figures are encouraging, but they do not capture the full complexity of our situation. Passenger load factors in Africa remain almost constant at 74.1% in October. Remains below the global average by 84.6%. This is due to factors such as limited routes, networks, infrastructure, constraints, and regulatory fragmentation, all of which restrict our ability to maximize capacity. It is important, and I can't highlight this enough, to distinguish between demand and profitability. While globally, the industry's projected net profit is $36 billion for 2025, it represents a modest margin of nearly $1 trillion in revenue globally. Today, Africa Airlines earn just $1.2 per seat net profit, in comparison to the global average of 7.7, and let's say the GCC countries, which is above $20 per seat. That means airlines in Africa will always struggle to achieve more than $1.2 per seat net profit. The African aviation market continues to face significant financial and regulatory pressure. As your association, our goal is to help streamline your operations, improve efficiency, and manage or reduce costs. I want to discuss connectivity, but I don't think I can say more than what Adi Funke just mentioned. She's been working hard for the last 4 years and on improving connectivity. She's moving from the contractual phase into the implementation phase. I believe that IATA, AFRAA, and ASA are fully willing to support Adi Funke from the airlines perspective to achieve better connectivity within the continent. For safety, even though this is controversial and people don't like me saying it, and these are the numbers on the top of my head because I initially did not want to write it. In 2025 so far, there are globally 1.1 accidents per million flight. In Africa, we have 10.3 accidents per million flight. To be honest, and I'm going to be very frank now, this should not be acceptable. Airlines, civil aviation, airports, NSPs, regulators, associations should see this red flag as something significantly serious, where lives are being lost due to safety issues. However, the nice thing I can say is for the last 2 years, so 24 and 2025, there has been no loss of life on the African continent due to aviation accidents. So on the one hand, that's a relief, but on the other hand, having 10.3 accidents per million flights is not acceptable. In the end of April 2026, IATA will be having its Focus Africa event in Addis Ababa, and there are 2 major initiatives that will be launched in that event that will tackle airlines, airports, and civil aviation safety standards. These standards have taken 2 years by a team of experts in Geneva and Montreal to develop, and we plan to implement it within about 16 states to start off. I encourage every CEO, every civil aviation authority to attend this event in Addis Ababa, where we can demonstrate and work together to start physically improving the safety standards on the continent. Another subject that I usually discuss, and this is probably where I start going off my script, is costs and profitability. So I'll read what I wrote here first, and then I'll rant off later. Taxes and charges in Africa is about, and remember this number, 15% higher than the rest of the planet. 15% higher. So the cost of living in Africa is way lower than the globe, but the charges, costs, taxes, levies for aviation in Africa is at least 15% higher. Okay, and I can name a few countries, but I won't, that are even higher than that. Okay, this is not acceptable. If an airline is making $1.2 profit per seat, now I know the Boeings and the Airbuses here would hate me saying this, but let's say a wide-body aircraft costs you, brand new from the manufacturer, $200 million. Okay, so an airport today in Africa will throw you back $1 billion. An airline, if it buys 5 wide bodies, is effectively just bought an airport. That's how expensive aircraft are. Why invest $200 million for one aircraft if you're only going to make $1.2 per seat? And the next question is, why is it globally every airline roughly makes $7.7 per seat, and in Africa we're only making $1.2 per seat? And how is it that the GCC carriers are making between $20 to $26 profit per seat? What's the magic that's happening there in comparison to the rest of the world, or in comparison to Africa? I did several events this year in different places in Africa, and depending on who's on my panel, or if Aaron's on the panel and we end up arguing and I start screaming and throwing numbers out. But I confess, so I'm an ex-CEO of an airline, and the whole idea is to maintain a safe operation. That's number one. That is profitable, okay, with the intention to grow at a certain rate, depending on the size of your country and the traffic that you have. You know, I've never ordered 100 aircraft, 200 aircraft, but I was ordering decent amounts of aircraft at billions of dollars of cost. If I was sitting and looking at my seat, my complete, net profit on my seat is $1.2, what sort of aircraft am I going to be ordering next year and the year after that and the year? What chance of growth is there when you're paying all sorts of charges, taxes, levies, fees, costs that just continually rise? This is one of the issues that I think that the three associations here, AFRAA, ASA, and IATA, should be working on. And while I have Abdurrahman Berthi, and while I have Aaron here in the room, who are falling asleep because of my boring speech, I would like to recommend that the three associations, including ACAO, the Arabic associations, because it involves Morocco, Algeria, Tunis, Egypt, and Libya, that we have quarterly meetings at different locations 4 times a year to discuss what the associations need to do to tackle as a unified task force the level of safety and the costs associated on the African continent. And I've already spoken to Aaron, but I didn't have a chance to talk to Abdurrahman Berthi about this. And I hope that you accept my offer to have at least 4 meetings planned next year, just the associations together, to hammer out a plan on how we can work with the airline industry and with AFCAC and civil aviations to improve safety and reduce operating costs. Thank you. It's the first time somebody claps for me. Okay. So this is where I'm going to go bananas. Just let me have a quick look at supply chain issues. Yeah, let me explain supply chain issues. Another thing. So when we look at charges here, forget the airport charges. There's going to be increase in flyover charges, air navigation charges, okay? There's already insurance in Africa is higher than anywhere else in the world. The cost to take a loan from a bank is already higher than everywhere else. Plus, now we have Airbus and Boeing here, and I'm only going to pick on Airbus and Boeing. I know they're the third party, but I like them, Airbus and Boeing, to be fair, okay? Because not every part in the aircraft is made by Airbus and Boeing, to be fair, okay? But let me show you some numbers that so we created a task force early this year to look at the supply chain issue. In fact, we actually created a whole department for this. So, the supply chain issues. Our recent analysis shows that these issues have added $11 billion of cost to the airline industry globally. 4.2 in excess fuel costs, 3.1 additional maintenance expenses for aging fleet, 2.6 billion for higher engine lease rates, and 1.4 billion for surplus inventory as airlines have to stock up and pile. I remember I did this exercise in 2005 in my old airline, where I looked at what was in the warehouse, and there was 110